love the mysteries and the corners of the internet. For those of you who are only listening and not watching, unfortunately, you get to miss out on this cool little story. But I told the senior delegate from the two boys in my family that I would show his first saw cuts on the internet. He got to use a little handsaw, and he made his first saw cuts, and then he wrote my first saw cuts on them after he had separated them from one another. But I am an extremely proud daddy because my kindergartner got to play with a miter box and brought me back his first saw cuts. So super awesome. Way to go, Big T.
Big T. TJ, we went live.
Of course we did. Hello.
Hi, welcome you guys to episode 141 of Sawdust Talk. And we are joined tonight with Mush, like push, but with an M, which is how
you remembered.
I know, which is how he announces himself. He is Maker Mush on Instagram, and we are going to talk all about him tonight. But first of all, we're going to go through sponsors.
Cool. We have a bunch of stuff that we have to cover tonight, so I'm going to hammer it out for you all real quick. The first of which is to say thank you to Hannah and the team over at Surf Prep. I spoke with Hannah today, and she told me some really cool stuff that the team is working on for next year. And you should all be jealous that I know insider stuff. But if you want to learn more about what's going on over at Surf Prep, go to their website. And if you decide to purchase one of their sanding systems, because you realize it is the premier sanding system and dust collector that you could have in your shop, you can use coupon code Sawdust Talk to save a little bit of money and put a little money in the pocket of the pod over here too, so that when Maker Camp and all the other fun events that you want us to show up to occur, we will have a tiny little bit more money to do that, and we would greatly appreciate it. Also, big shout out to Layla over at Casey Bombshell Design. Layla is hosting our merch gear. Everybody loves Layla. She is as sweet as a peach. And if you like tattoo flash inspired scroll saw art and pop culture nerdy ratitude, she is the woe man to talk to about that. So big shout out to Layla as well. And the third thing I want to touch on is Makers for St. Jude. We partnered with Mike over at Makers for St. Jude, who is the most righteous dude. And this year we set a goal of $20,000 to raise for fighting childhood cancer, because childhood cancer sucks. And we found out that allying with Mike and reaching out to the maker community who makes cool stuff, we can leverage their cool stuff to do great things for people who need our help. We have blown through our second goal of fundraising, which was raised from $20,000 to $35,000. And I believe we're at $37,000 now, and potentially starting to poke at 40 grand raised for St. Jude Children's Charities. So we're very proud of Mike. We're very proud of all of you who have chosen to participate. And there, I believe, is a second drawing for the second challenge that should be coming in the not too distant future. So if you participated or you want to get in last minute, reach out to Mike Suter over at Woodworker versus Cancer or Makers for St. Jude. We love you, Mike. Thank you for being so awesome. Last humble thing that we need to touch on is that there is a Patreon for this podcast. And if you love
Sawdust Talk, you can join our Patreon, buy us a cup of coffee, or just support the podcast. But we are joined tonight with Mush. And let's talk about him.
Well, hey.
Who are you?
Hey.
Where'd you come from?
I've been here the whole time. So my name is Mush. Not my birth name, but it's the name I go by. I am a makerspace teacher in a private school just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. This is my 8th year there. I've kind of lost track of how many years I've been in education, because I did some time as maternity subbing. I did some time as nonprofit consulting, working with teachers and students. So I've been in and out of the classroom for a while now, creeping up on 20 years, which is wild. But it's been neat to be in all sorts of different places. And I've been in this world ever since I started teaching at Cannon School, which is where I am. And I always told myself that it would be really cool to teach at the same school where my wife teaches. She's a band teacher. I was going to be a band teacher, but here I am now. And one day I was on the website and said, let's take a look at their job postings. Wouldn't it be wild if, hey, wait a minute, there's a job posting for a makerspace teacher. And it kind of checked all the boxes of the stuff I was into, the nerdy tech, some woodworking, 3D printing, CAD, like all the everything, all the shop class stuff. With all the toys that have been invented since shop class was a thing. Applied for it, got it, and here we are 8 years later, still trying to figure out how to do it as well as I can. In that time, we've done a lot of cool stuff. My buddy Lee has been at the school for 20-something years now. He started the maker program at the school and has kind of paved the way for what we're doing there. And we just brought on another teacher there. So he does middle school, I do high school, and our colleague Lisa does the lower school. So we got a junior K through 12th grade maker program at our school, which is pretty wild and pretty awesome. Yeah, I know, big thumbs up. I'm really proud to be a part of that. And it's been really cool to see how that's grown with what we want it to be in response to what the kids want it to be, and in response to what the kids who have graduated say, here's where it is and here's what you might continue to try to do better. So that's who I am. That's where I am. That's a little bit of where I came from.
Oh, that's awesome.
I have two questions. What instrument do you play?
So I was going to be a band teacher. I play a bunch. If you needed me to pick up an instrument right now, I could pick up any of the clarinets, maybe some of the saxophones, trumpet if you gave me a couple of days to warm up on it, and electric bass. If you gave me more time, I mean, all of them. I learned all of them, and it was a lot of fun. My wife's a band teacher. She can play all of them. We met in music history class in college. It was really sweet. But yeah, my main horn, I started on bass clarinet. That's my pride and joy, the one I have the tattoo of. But bass guitar is probably my main axe these days. And then trumpet is my parachute.
Your parachute. Love it.
I love it. My second question was, what does teaching entail, like, in this point for you with your students?
Oh, so this is the rest of the podcast, right? This is my 8th year teaching. This is my 10th version of the class. I did a hard pivot halfway through my first year because I realized that my ideas of what I wanted the kids to do and how they wanted to do it wasn't working. So I said, nope, we're going to nuke this. We're going to blow it up and try it differently. The other major kind of shift was COVID. We went home in March and we were still teaching. We were still teaching remotely. Hard to do makerspace class without a makerspace, but we figured out what to do. So the guiding philosophy behind what I'm trying to do is to get these kids to be good problem solvers and storytellers. And we do that with the vehicle of like learning how to use epoxy in the wood shop and the laser cutter and the 3D printer. The tools are there as vehicles to practice being bad at something, learn how to get better at it. And then my goal is to give them a buffet of makerspace and have them figure out what their favorite foods are, so that by the end of the year, they get a chance to practice with some open-ended projects and get good at what they love, because that passion is going to fuel their progress. I mean, if I just stick them in the wood shop for the entire year, they'll get better, but the kids who don't love it won't get a lot better. And the kids who do love it will just be head and shoulders above them. So this has been probably my most successful year so far. Thanks a lot to our buddy Joe Jocks. He helped me. He did some crazy good sessions at Workbench Con a couple years ago about video editing. And as a teacher, I was able to use that. And actually, he lives local, close to me. So we met up last year and talked about how to kind of structure teaching in a way that was accessible to kids on their own speed. So last summer, I spent a couple of weeks taking, what did I do? We did woodshop basics, we did laser cutting, 3D printing, and a vinyl cutter, just like really low barrier to entry tools. And I sat down and I made 20-minute videos of me explaining the basics of all of them. You're not going to be great after 20 minutes of watching a video, But you can watch a 20-minute video as many times as you need to. And you can watch it at whatever speed you want to get good at the basics. And I had all the kids rotate through that experience of just, you get 3 days to get as good as you can at a laser cutter. Like, you're not going to be great, but you're going to have a taste of it. And after those 4, you're going to know which ones you like the best. And you're going to be able to use those for the first half of the year to make all your projects. We'll do another one of that in January to get some epoxy, and we'll do CNC, and we'll do some more advanced woodshop stuff. But just getting the kids as much experience as quickly and safely as they can, so they can figure out what they love, and they can start niching down on their own personal weird to get good at making stuff and the problem solving of, like, all right, the epoxy didn't cure, the CNC didn't work, the laser cutter is not laser cutting, what's going on? That is what I really want them to get good at. And when they get stuck, I heckle them when they come and ask me questions, because there's a dozen other kids, 2 dozen other kids in the class that they could ask first. And then there's Google. And, like, I know a lot of this stuff, but I don't want to be your answer. I want to help you get unstuck. I don't want to be your Google search, because Google search should be your Google search. Because that's a lot of how, when we're working on stuff independently, how we figure stuff out. We ask our community, and then we ask the internet, which is just our community, but bigger. So I give them a lot of opportunities to practice what that really feels like in the classroom. So that's what a makerspace teacher looks like right now, at least for high school. My class is an arts elective that they can choose to take. So the kids that are there, 95% of them want to be there. They've chosen to be there. They think this is going to be a great experience for me. And so they get the problem solving experience and then the storytelling. If they make something awesome, I'm really proud of them. I'm really excited for them. If they don't, and it literally or figuratively blows up in their face, I'm usually more excited, because that's a better story and that's a better experience, and it's going to stick with them more. They're going to remember that. They're going to be able to say, man, this one time, this project just totally failed, but my teacher was able to be there to support me and keep me going. And it still never came together, but I remember that good experience of trying it and trying it and trying it and feeling supported to try it, even when it didn't work. I mean, that's what I'm going for, is to try and give them the practice of messing it up and figuring it out after.
Love it. I love it. Some of my favorite middle school memories are from when we only had shop class. It was a loose interpretation of industrial tech. That word didn't really get thrown around back in the early 90s when I was in middle school, and Green Day only had 2 albums, like in the way back whens.
Yeah.
But we did, it wasn't like a Pinewood Derby, but it was wooden cars with CO2 cartridges.
Yes. Yeah, we did those too.
Back of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still curriculum or not, because, like, I feel like it was probably more dangerous than we let on. I mean, it was on a really strong piece of fishing line with some eye hooks, and You
had a special tool that hit it. You weren't just whacking it with a hammer and a nail.
No,
you might have been whacking it with a hammer and a nail. So we had a couple of kids that did that project last year in my space. They've done a version in middle school, so it's still happening. But they wanted to level it up and come up with their own versions. And so the dream is still alive.
Oh, that pleases me so much that still happens. Because in my mind, I think if my wife watched one of my children participate in that, she might lay an egg. And that's okay, right? Because, contemporary parenting is tricky. But, like...
It is tricky.
God, man, that's so rad. I love that.
PJ, you're raising boys. Like, she needs to raise herself for this stuff. Because it's gonna...
yeah. Well, she does a really good job. She does a really good job.
I just am thinking about, like, ironically, Total Boat wearing their swag right now, but what was the Thickso?
Thickso. I love Thickso. For the boats?
But they were like, well, we did the rockets, right? At Maker Camp.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is like a combustible, like, exothermic reaction that we're, like, putting an explosive, we're attaching an explosive to our rockets with a exothermic material. And I was like, is this, like, a good thing? Like...
So you just glued the rocket on with the Totobond. Totobond is not exothermic, probably.
What? I mean, it is.
Probably fine, probably.
If you spray it.
It's cyanoacrylite. Like, it's literally acrylic. That's petroleum.
Yeah. I
Hey,
was
if
like,
Zyla said it was okay, I'm okay with it.
Zyla said it was okay.
Yeah, I mean, Zyla puts her thumbs up on it. I guess we do listen.
I mean,
But no,
Zyla
I
doesn't know how
did
to rock it.
envision, I mean, there's wadding in there, right? The wadding keeps the flames from coming out the other end as much, right? So, like, that's good.
So
There were
just hold
fewer
it the right
explosions that
way.
weekend than I was afraid of.
What was that?
There were fewer explosions that weekend than I was afraid of or hoping for. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, I was
Just-
really impressed that the sawmill guys also didn't really have an issue all weekend of just running chainsaws nonstop. That pleased me a lot. And I know how safe. Can
please
you still
explain
hear
more.
me?
We
Yes.
can still hear you. You're coming back in.
Oh, no.
We'll bring him back in. Hi, TJ. So what were you talking about? The good, bad, ugly of Maker Camp?
Yeah. I mean, so Maker Camp this past year was a lot of fun. I missed the year before because my second daughter was born a month before, and sometimes life happens. And
Yeah.
I didn't miss out on the rain. So this year I was excited to see how happy people were compared to how much I had heard spirits and bodies were dampened the year before. And just it was still Maker Camp. It just wasn't as fun as the other years had been. So if I was going to miss a year, that was the year to miss. But I was really excited to be back this year for not having been at Maker Camp for 2 years. I had gone to Workbench Con twice in a row and not Maker Camp, which was really weird because I'm originally from the Hudson Valley. I was born about 45 minutes away from Maker Camp. So getting to go back to upstate New York in the autumn, it was and hang out with the raddest community. It's a treat. So I'm always excited to get to go back to there. But it was a really great year. Lee and I set up the podcast and we did a bunch of episodes, Storyteller's Tavern, and got to sit down with folks at night, but we still got to play during the day. So Lee made a awesome double-headed axe. I made a fine hatchet. But my focus and love was on the racket relay. And I had a lot of fun at the Total Blood tent. They know how to bring a party, whether it's a project or the actual party, and their light up glasses. Those are pretty cool. But it was great to be back. It was great to see the people, and like this is fun. I love it when I get to do this with people in the community. But like getting to walk up to somebody and give them a high five or a hug, it doesn't happen often enough. So we gotta cherish those moments when they do. So I was appreciative of that. But yeah, how was Maker Camp for you guys? I know TJ, you said you were.
It was my first year. It was
Dang.
my first year. I had reached out to Pat Lapp prior to Maker Camp because I was stoked to meet him in person. And we worked out a little situation where I was going to bring wooden tools for him because getting both of those things back and forth from Canada to the US can be a burden. And I was going to be driving up anyway. I got some family in Akron, which is close enough to a halfway point that I got to see my granny and hang out with her, and then drove the rest of the way in. So like that works out real well. But Pat is super popular, and I thought he was going to be turning more, but he like wasn't. And I was like, well, it's my wood and my tools. Okay, Harvey, this lathe is my lathe. So I parked it at the Harvey lathe in that Highland tent for 2.5 days.
Nice.
And just turned and turned and turned. I had a blast, man.
Yeah.
Like I got a chance to hang out with Logan Newman, which was awesome because we'd never met in person. I got to see some of my former co-hosts from Sawdust talk again in person, which brings me tons of joy. And what I
threw
thought
a bowl at somebody's head.
I threw a piece of a bowl at someone's head. And I didn't throw it per se. It was flung at an incredibly high rate of speed. What my brain thought Maker Camp was going to be versus what I actually experienced at Maker Camp was surprisingly far apart.
Huh.
Yeah, I expected more like a massive tailgate where a couple of people were doing some demos. I did
Okay.
not know that it was like 3 baseball fields worth of awesome people being awesome simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, I've run out of words, strangely. You can visit all the tents, and the thing is just because you made it to a tent doesn't mean that you saw everything that tent was going to do that weekend, right? And that blew me away. And how they power the whole thing. Like, that's the
that part is crazy. That part is magic.
I don't fully understand how you can run like 6 220-volt generators 8 feet away from like another 220 tool, and then like run all of the forges and the power hammers. I want to see that generator, but I couldn't hear it the whole weekend. So like, it has to exist.
One of the risks of Maker Camp is going in blind like that and being so positively overwhelmed. I mean, I think the first year we went, we had a Maker Camp hangover for about a week and a half, 2 weeks after we got home. Just there being surrounded by that many people of that caliber of craftsmanship and skill of like one specific niche. And then there's another person like the same thing, but in a different skill. And you're surrounded by hundreds of those people. And it's really, there's a real risk of seeing all these people and getting overwhelmed by the sheer skill level that's there. But also getting too used to it and saying, I could do this literally every day. I would show up to this field in East Durham, New York with these people every day of the year, maybe go home to my family a couple days a year. But just being able to do that on the regular is not something, it's magical is kind of a funky word, but I think it's the right word to use for what these kind of get-togethers are, especially when people are able to ply their craft in person and just geek out and share what you're so excited and passionate about with people who are excited to learn from you. I mean, that it's perfect.
And you can go as a spectator, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can be completely hands off and just be there to drink with your eyes all day. And then when the sun goes down, you'll probably drink with your mouth. And that's wonderful. But the fact that like there's so many opportunities for everyone to actively participate in anything you could be curious about. And then there's like,
you didn't know you wanted to do
20 people waiting, frothing at the mouth to be your helpful Henry or Henrietta and just walk you through doing something totally badass, right? And they're just waiting. They want to be your Mr. Miyagi of like any discipline of doing cool stuff. And that blew me away. And the fact that the forge never stops.
This is true.
In the small hours of the morning. Yep,
Yeah, no, there are hammers tinkling in that forge all day and all night. Like the dwarves never slept this year. And it was amazing. You know, like there's a bunch of people staggering around the field in the wee after hours, and there's still 3 people hanging out in the forge, keeping the coals warm, making railroad spike knives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just
why waste the time?
Yeah.
So Mush, you one big thing about these maker get-togethers is storytellers.
Yeah.
Tell us how that started and more about that.
Yeah. So the first year we went, I went with Lee and 2 of the other teachers from our school, art teachers, and we just went and we were overwhelmed in the positive way, and we drank it all in and said, this is phenomenal. And that sort of like, what could we be the Mr. Miyagi's of? The answer is nothing. Compared to everyone else who was there, there's nothing that we are better at from a like craftsmanship style a standpoint than anybody who's bringing their game to Maker Camp. That's part of why you go, so you get to see that level all in one spot. But the part of the magic that we captured was in those small hours after you're done drinking with your eyes and you gather around a campfire and started other ways of drinking. You had these, again, magical fleeting moments where you were standing next to a random person of the hundreds of people that were there, staring at the fire, start talking, you have a conversation for 5-10 minutes, and then you go your separate ways. Like ships in the night, you've had your conversation, you've had your interaction, and then it's done. And it's not bad. It was great. It was a wonderful interaction. And it was a really special opportunity to share with that person. I think there's a certain vulnerability that comes with being a part of a community where you get there and everybody is there to be themselves, and the themselves that they want to be is the themselves that is welcomed and accepted by everybody in this community. So when we're getting ready to go back the next year, we said, how can we capture that and distill it? And our first idea was terrible. I said, we should do TED Talks right in the main pavilion and just have all these people who are going to be these expert craftsmen talk about their journey of how they got there. And it was a terrible idea. And I'm so glad that Lee said, wait a minute, what if we do a podcast? And I was really excited because in college, I had dabbled in podcasts. And this is when podcasting was like, is this really a thing? And like the word had, I think, been officially defined at that point, maybe. And it was pre-iPhone, so there was no podcast app yet, but I was still excited by the idea of an RSS feed with an MP3 in it. So when Lee said we should do these conversations and capture them and share them, I was all over it. And the idea behind the Storytellers Tavern has always been to capture that same effect. You are there at the events, so we don't do it in the studio. We don't try and find silence. We try and set up in as much of the thick of it as we can, so you get the anvils clanking. You can hear the snaps of the fire in the background. You can hear the karaoke party starting off as you don't know that it's about to happen and you're in the middle of an interview. It's fine. And have those conversations and tell those stories and share those moments with really rad people who are really good at what they do and have had a fascinating journey to get to there. And our podcast is less about, tell us about your favorite kind of epoxy. Do you like the thick set? Do you like the medium hard? It's less about that and more about who inspired you? Like, what was your CO2 car in middle school that sparked this in you and have set you on this path for the next 20, 30 years to get good at this making stuff? So we set up, we have a little mobile podcast rig. We just plunk it down in the middle of wherever we are, and hit record and just start telling stories about how we got to where we are and go from there. And it's been really awesome. We've met some super rad people. We've had some crazy stories. And it's been a really neat journey to go on so far. And like I said, we're not masters in any particular craft. We're middle school and high school teachers, and we are our job is to kind of make it up on the daily. Despite our best planned efforts, there's going to be a kid that shows up and messes everything up within the first 15 minutes of class, and we improvise and adapt from there. So that kind of finding the thread and keeping it and teasing it out and following it, that is what we're good at, and that's what we try to bring to our podcasts and our stories. And our experiences. So we did that. Our first Maker Camp was 21. So we've been doing that Maker Camp 22 and Workbench Con 23 and since. So it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun. And like I said, we met some cool people and heard some really cool stories since then. And Jessie, you were supposed to be on there with your daughter. And we sat down and had the conversation. And I messed up the recording, and I feel pretty silly. And I was pretty frustrated when it happened because it was such a good conversation, and we were really vibing with talking and learning more. And your daughter is a natural on the mic. She was just crushing it. She was having a lot of fun, it felt like. And I looked down, and the red light was not on. I desperately tried slamming it a couple of times, and there was a problem with the SD card, as there always is. So one of the hazards of running a mobile podcast rig, I know y'all can empathize, but that was the only kind of downside to it, is that there's always that risk. I mean, there's always that you're not in a controlled environment. You're very much in an uncontrolled environment on purpose. So those things happen. But it all worked out, and we'll rain check you. We'll get you back on.
We will rain check, because my daughter is already planning our next trip to Maker Camp next year.
Perfect.
So we can.
Alyssa was a whirlwind of a good time.
What sessions will she be running next year?
She will likely be helping Ryan Cochran in the chopstick booth.
Are you sure she's not going to be running the Hammer Game session?
Yeah, and then giving late night lessons in Hammer Game, right?
Hammer Schlagen.
Yeah. Birkenstürken.
She's she's ridiculous. I mean, this last weekend she had her AU like end of season tournament, and they took camping. And like, I'm not even surprised. She's just good at everything she does. So she just shows up. She has good attitude. She builds it on everything. I'm like, I'm doing the right thing because I'm raising a little human that's probably better than I am. So
that's the dream, right?
We're winning over here.
Good.
So what was the shop story that you feel like lit a match for you? How did the fuse get lit? Again, just because you swim in it all the time, so it may not be one that you participated in as a kid, but like, was there a teaching moment or a project that you did where you were like, wait a minute, this might actually be my destiny? This is...
So that's a twisted journey. I loved middle school. We called it tech because we had it in 3 parts. We had the computer class with the wood shop, and then we had an engineering bit, and you would do each one for a third of a semester, because the other half of the year you would do the home and career skills, which I also really liked. But the wood shop, and this is weird for a wood shop teacher, the wood shop never really thrilled me. My dad taught me a lot of wood shop stuff. I was in Boy Scouts, so I did some stuff through there. The middle school wood shop wasn't it. We did the CO2 cars, which was awesome. I can't remember another project that I did in that class. I remember a lot of what I did in the tech stuff, because if I'm being honest, I am more of a digital maker than a hands-on maker. That's kind of where my happy place is. If I can do a lot on the computer and as much or less in the real world, that's what does it for me. So I love laser cutting. CAD, when it cooperates, is great. But that is kind of my balance that I really like. So I'll go more into like coding and microcontrollers. So my middle school tech experience is really good. Mr. Rosasco, my coding teacher, he wasn't even coding. He was a computer teacher. We learned how to type. We learned Hyper Studio, which is the precursor to PowerPoint. And that had some like basic scripting, but that was my happy place. So that class kind of informed a lot of what I liked to do, as far as, I didn't even know what was making back then, but as far as making stuff. Later on in high school, I didn't know what I was going to do post high school. I was, I'll figure it out. Junior year comes, and we get halfway through junior year, and I got invited to participate in an all-state level wind ensemble. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm going to go on my bass clarinet. And I went there, and the guest conductor, a really famous composer, Robert W. Smith, passed away a couple of years ago. He was our guest conductor. And he said, all right, how many of you are going to be music teachers? And most of the band raised their hand. I said, I have never even thought of being a music teacher. That would be really rad. So as of January, junior year, that was my path. I was going to go be a music teacher. And I did that. I went, and my wife is over there. She didn't know this story. I didn't know she didn't know this story.
See? Well, our crew to the size of 10.
This is it. This is the power of podcasting.
Do we need to get her in this? She can join. She's welcome to.
She is posted up. She just had her concert, so she is enjoying a well-reserved crash. She did. She did a whole bunch of Robert W. Smith business on her concert.
Is she watching it live?
She's watching me live. She's also watching YouTube. It's good.
Okay.
She's also kind of staring at me more than I expected her to. This is so yeah, Robert W. Smith said, who wants to be a band teacher? Most of the band said, I do. And I said, oh, maybe I could do that too, which was really cool. And that was my plan until spring of senior year, when they started doing all the senior awards. And I was taking a coding class, and I had gotten a coding award that came with a scholarship to go be a computer science degree studier. So I had a pivotal moment. My dad was a computer science engineer for his whole life. That was his only job. He was a software engineer. So I was like, man, I really like this music thing. I really like this coding thing. And like, my dad's done the coding thing. What should we do? So I went down to his office. I said, what should I do? And he set me really straight. He said, like, there are going to be things that you like doing and things that you love doing. And the one that you have to choose is the one that you love doing, because you could always do the ones that you like doing. And, it's very, paternal advice, and sort of thing I hope I get the chance to tell my daughter. My wife's screaming in the background. She didn't know this story yet. So I had to decide, like, I like coding a lot, but I really love the idea of doing music and teaching it. Which is funny because I'm not a music teacher right now. I went to music school for 4 years. I did a music teaching degree. I did a music business degree. That's where I met my wife. And it was awesome. And so that was a really cool journey. It taught me a lot about not just how to be a music teacher, but the classes that I took. Some of the classes I took taught me how to be a really good teacher. And I did a master's in instructional technology, which I thought was going to be nerds who wanted to be better teachers, but it was teachers who wanted to be better nerds. So I was already the nerd with the computer science stuff that I had been able to keep up with clubs and hobbies through college while I was doing the music business degree. And the master's in instructional tech like really got me deep into the nerdy stuff with curriculum development. And that was fun because that led me into a job where I got to live in the Virgin Islands for a year and like design and teach a computer literacy course. Yeah, that was wild. Yes. Yeah. So and then
learning about Mush tonight.
it's a Mush adventure. So my music teaching degree got me really into educational philosophy, which got me back into technology. So it's kind of been this swinging back and forth like a helix of experiences of education and tech and music, and just this upward spiral the whole time. So eventually, after I got done with college, I went and I did some curriculum design and teacher teaching with tech stuff, and did that for a bunch of years. So I did that in the Virgin Islands for a year. I then started to do remote work before remote work was cool, where I was working with teachers where they were implementing the software into their classroom. But I miss the classroom. I miss working with kids a lot. So that's when I started looking for, like, I have all this curricular knowledge. I lack the educational experiences. Let's get back in there. So that's how I got to there. And it's been really cool. It's been neat kind of drawing from all these different music and tech and curriculum and smashing it together into what I'm doing. I don't do like a lot of music teaching in my class, obviously, but I do draw from a big part of learning an instrument is realizing for the first time, since you're able to think about it and process it, that you're bad at something. Like, you pick up an instrument, you were bad at it the first time. You were bad at it when you started to learn how to talk and walk and all this other stuff, but you were too young to care. So when you start an instrument for the first time and you're bad at it, that's hard. I mean, that's hard for middle schoolers. It's hard for grownups and everywhere in between. So a lot of the philosophy of how do you say yes, and here's how you can get better at it, or here's how you can be okay with being bad at something. I mean, like Jake the dog, sucking at something is the first step of being good. And yeah, here's how to fail. That has formed and informed a lot of how I approach what I do on the class. I'm really fortunate that like we can get good supplies. And if you want to try doing epoxy for the first time, it's okay when you mess it up the first 3 times. Because when you get to the 4th time and it's awesome because of all the things you've learned, messing it up along the way, like that's going to feel better for you. That's going to stick with you better than just me telling you how to mix it and pour it and let it cure. Like, the kids getting the experience of messing it up and figuring it out is what's so critical about the learning process in general, and like what we do and figuring out. I mean, that is what the spark was. It's realizing that I like messing up and figuring out why.
I love that.
And CO2 cars.
So question, being in the maker community like you are, do you have brands that you have brought into the makerspace in your classroom?
Yes. One of the coolest things about going to like Workbench Con especially, but Maker Camp some, is getting to meet the rad people behind some of the companies. I mean, Jessie, hold up your shirt again. It's Total Boat all the way is like the epitome of a rad company doing rad stuff for rad people. The humans at that organization are so cool. Like, I got to meet and hang out with more of them this past Maker Camp than ever before. And they're all so awesome. They're kind and they're passionate and they're smart and they're funny and they love fun. and they make a really good product. So that's what I love about them. It's been an interesting kind of road to explore in terms of like, I am not a content creator or like not a traditional content creator. I have like 2 YouTube videos that I'm proud of that are traditional content creation. But most of my YouTube videos are, here's how to operate our vinyl cutter. Again, watch it on 1.5 speed as many times as you need to until you can do it. So forming some of the relationships with these brands has been neat, and it's kind of felt like we had cheat codes because we could say, hey, we're teachers, we're helping out kids, can you help us out? And like, people are really excited to help out kids. So some of the ones that's been most fun to work with, obviously Total Boat. We have a really good relationship with Cutsall. I mean, Lee and I, to the point where we were doing some Cutsall sessions at Workbench Con, which is really neat. That was so cool to be able to be a teacher, because again, I'm not a master of any sort of craft. I can't be by nature. I got to be kind of okay at a ton of stuff. But being really good at teaching a specific thing felt really good. And I'm going to pause for a second to just shout out Jessie again, because last year at Workbench Con, Lee and I, and Leah was there. The 3 of us, we were doing a power carving session with spoons. It was scary. It was going into this, again, community of experts to say, hey, look at this thing we kind of know how to do. And I know it was Lindsay who told you to do it, but you were the one who actually did it. Lindsay said, go sit in the front rows of your friends' sessions and cheer them on, because they need cheerleaders, and you got to be that love in the world to make them feel great. And Jessie, it felt so great to have you there and just like, yeah, I'm here, do your thing. You got this. You good. Just tell us what to do. So that was really cool. Getting to teach a power carving session to people who are way better at power carving than I was, but they were there to have fun and make some sawdust and make a spoon or make a butter knife last year.
Yeah.
That was really neat. And so thank you again for that support. But that was neat. So
I hope you get to do it again.
I do too. I don't know what we're going to make this year. We've done knives before, so maybe we should just do the whole cutlery set. We'll be good to go. We could do like wedding gifts, or it'll be fine. But brand partnerships, as if that's the technical definition when you're in the ed space, it's been neat. It's been really good to find those. The crocodile claws guys just sent us a whole mess of those for our epoxy station setup that I have. And it's those relationships are neat. What's been tricky for me is like, I want to be a better Instagrammer and YouTuber and share what's going on in my classroom, because I'm really excited about it. I'm really proud of what the kids are doing. It's tricky to navigate figuring out what I can and can't share, specifically with kids' faces. It's like, here's this project that a kid did. The projects are cool, but we're not excited about each other's work because of the project. We're excited about each other's work because of the humans behind it. So it's tricky to try and get people excited about stuff without the human. I found it to be tricky to do that. So I'm still exploring that and figuring out what is a good balance, what's an appropriate balance. I would just love for kids to set up their own Instagrams of like, hey, look what I did in my makerspace class today. I think I've had 2 so far, but that's okay. We'll get there. We'll get more.
Well, and we've all been bombarded with new teen accounts in the last week. So who knows? Maybe participation will increase. But
good deal.
I got sucked into Instagram as a portfolio tool. You know, I had sort of stepped away from a majority of social media for 10 years. I just quit. I had to focus on other things. And got into woodworking, and Instagram was just a reasonable place to keep a portfolio. And then it all turned into videos. Who knew?
There you go. What's neat, so I'm teaching my makerspace class. I'm also doing a design thinking class this year that's tied in with entrepreneurship. And one of the things that we've been exploring is the idea of a case study. So it's not just like, here's the thing I made. It's here's the process I went through to get to the thing I made. And that's kind of always driven what I want my kids to do. We do portfolio pages, but I don't know if it's inaccurately named, because the portfolio piece is the nice picture at the top of the page. What I really want them to focus on is the steps that they went through, and like, what did you mess up, and what YouTube videos did you find that kind of informed how you're going to do that? What feedback did you get from your classmates, or what did you give feedback to your classmates on that help make you be a better designer, a better crafter? The way we do our grades is not the way I had my grades done. Instead of saying you got an 87 on that epoxy project, I have like 6 different things I want the kids to be good at, like finding good ideas, coming up with your own good ideas, making good stuff. That's only 1/6 of our class. Giving good feedback and getting good feedback, telling a great story about your process, and then taking care of the space, because kids are still not good at that. But I give them grades based on that instead of just like a generic, did you make the cuts at the right angle? Did you make the cuts at the right angle? And if not, why not? And what are you going to do next time is a better assessment of like, are you getting better at this whole craftsmanship thing?
Right.
So that's how we set up our assessments and our feedback. And like, we can get way nerdy on curriculum. I don't think you want to, but if you want to, watch out.
I think what's really cool though about like where you and Lee are at with, you know, being influencers, this is a light quotation,
Yes, thank you.
but having people like us that are bringing in the next generation of makers is showing them that there is a space on the internet that is inclusive and inviting and supportive. Because I mean, social media can be such a negative place for these kids these days. So giving them a space where it's like, hey, you can find something you're passionate about and you can find a community that is going to support you, makes it feel less dangerous. I mean, at least for me as a parent, that's how I feel.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's all, a lot of it is and taking responsibility for the content that your children or your students are engaging with, and just making sure that it is like capital G good, like good for your soul, good for your brain, good for your development. And that is, again, I'll use the word tricky. Have either of you read the book Steal Like an Artist, Austin Kleon?
No.
It's a great, really short, big print, lots of pictures read. He's an artist, and it's just is like 10 little chapters about his philosophy of creativity, like where to get ideas, what to do with ideas. It's okay to be bored. And one of the things he says is like, find other people who are better than you and like take everything that they've done and put it through yourself so you can figure out what your version is. So one thing I'm really excited to do, like that is our textbook for the class, is we read all 10 chapters over the course of a year, and the chapters are about 7 pages long. But there's one of them that says like, find the people who are really good. So I'm really excited when we get to that chapter, because I'm able to say like, go check out all these people on Instagram or TikTok or wherever like you normally are, teenagers, but like go find these specific people, because they're making rad art, they're making rad creations, and they're my friends. And like, if you want to talk more with them or learn more from them, like shoot them a message and they will tell you, not just because they know me, but because that's like who this community is. Yeah. So getting these kids, and again, there's only a handful of them that are going to actually like say, yes, I want to keep doing this. And they will do it. I mean, like I said, I have one kid who's got a wood turning Instagram page. That's all he posts. He's a freshman in high school. He's posting his wood turning class. It's awesome. But if nothing else, these kids will see that there is more out there than the Family Army clips or whatever you want to like swipe through on your devices. There are good people doing good stuff on the internet still, which is reassuring, and letting them know about it is something I'm proud to do.
You said this young Turner is junior, senior? Freshman. Okay.
Yeah.
He's a freshman?
We have a high school aged member of the Royal Order of Woodturners who is in Holland. And so we're going to talk after the show about getting an honorary membership for your young friend also.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll talk to him. That's awesome.
See, that's why we meet each other. That's the power of the podcast, right? It's amazing.
I love this so much.
But yeah, I think one of my favorite parts of this episode, and it hasn't even concluded yet, is just the enthusiasm that is contagious when we all get to talking about the things that bring us this much joy. Right? Like, oh man, it's so good. It's so good. We're wrapping up the year and everybody's getting a little introspective and reflective. And it's like, there was a lot of things that happened in 2024 that made us all feel like we were jumping over flaming hurdles. I don't think anybody escaped that feeling where it was like, oh my God, again, right? And this has interpersonal, parents getting sick, lice outbreaks, you name it, right? Like, right?
Yeah.
But like, I love that, like, all of the high points in between stepping over, flaming hurdles in my gasoline boots, they were so good. The high points were so high this year.
I think something this community does really well, and I don't remember if I said this before or after we started recording, is we're okay with being vulnerable with each other, because we've all, like, I think most of us, except for my freshmen, have like picked this up as grown-ups. Like, we've loved doing this for all our lives, but we haven't like really tried doing this until we were grown-ups, and that's hard. And it's there's a lot that we messed up, and finding a community that says, yeah, that's what you do, and it's okay to do that, and we'll help you out when that happens, is really, really valuable and really, really special. So I mean, I love this community. I love everybody in it. And I love that we are able to have that support and trust and honesty and vulnerability with each other. Not to get too squishy mushy, but like that, yeah, a little bit, because that's what makes it feel so good when we're able to share like that.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm also convinced that all of the people that are woodworkers and makers on Instagram are just like the punk rockers from high school that needed something to do with their spare time, because
that's it.
It's not that punk's dead, but it's just woodworking now, and like, that's cool.
Woodworking's not dead.
No, woodworking.
We all have our story, and this is I think it's really fun to have people like you on, where we get to learn a little bit more about you. And I mean, I met you 2 workbench cons ago?
2 workbench cons ago, yeah, in that hotel lobby.
A picture in the lobby when we were sitting on the floor, late hours of the night. It was like
early
you,
hours
me,
of the morning.
I think it was Scott Goucher. Who else was in that picture? I don't remember. But we had so much fun. Like, and this is just like the community. Like, you just get to meet these people, and they like to do cool shit like you like to do cool shit, and we just all get to do cool shit together and share it with each other. So I really am drawn to like you and Lee for the fact that you both teach, and I think that's something that I hold dear to my heart, because my daughter has shown such an interest in being in the shop with me. So I really do admire anyone who is sharing this with the next generation of makers. And
like, don't discount yourselves. I mean, that's something that people will say, oh, you guys are such good teachers. Like, everybody who puts something on the internet is a teacher. You might not have a classroom, but you're teaching something. You're sharing something about what you learned and how you got better at it. I mean, that makes you a teacher. Sorry, I mean, no degree, no classroom, doesn't matter. You are helping other people learn and get better. And that's the mantra right there.
Exactly. Well, we have gone well over our hour.
Yeah, that does mean that we got to take a lap through sponsors too, right?
Do it up.
We do. TJ will take us through our sponsors, and then we're going to get to our last question for you.
And This is all absolutely assuming that my camera continues to work.
It's fine. We're doing great.
So, I can hear you, and I'm pretty sure the mic's working, but we're gonna do this. Okay, so the market has some pretty big contenders when it comes to choosing a sander or whose abrasives you're going to put on your sander. But let me tell you, nobody likes rough wood. But if you want to have the finest finish and the smoothest wood to run your hands across, Surf Prep is the company that we choose on this podcast. Hannah supported us for well over a year now, getting close to starting our 3rd year of our relationship with her. Amazing company, amazing family. A lot of it's made here in the USA. Just really, really great people. If you're shopping at Surf Prep, use coupon code Sawdust Talk, and yeah, you can save some money there. Layla, Casey Bombshell Designs, Patreon. Our Patreon's only $5 at the lowest level, which basically would buy a coffee for Jessie and half a coffee for me, because my coffees are bigger coffees. This is just a wonderful show. I'm so jazzed right now. What am I missing, Jessie? Makers for St. Jude is wrapping up. Mike at Woodworker versus Cancer, Makers for St. Jude, is a rock star. Get involved, get awesome, and let your cool stuff do cool things for great people who need your help. And with that, I think we are going to squeak in the final question, which we talked about in the green room, so it's not really a surprise to you. But every week, the last question that we ask our guests is to share a motivational thought, a quote, a reason to get excited, to pick up a tool, or maybe just even open your workshop and make a mess, or just be slightly more radical. What would you like to share with our listeners and watchers?
So I've been playing around with these 3 words for a couple of years now, and as I'm doing this, my baby's starting to cry in the monitor, so I can mute it and post or whatever. It's make stuff better, and I like that you can do it 2 different ways. You can do make stuff better where, like, you made it good last time, make it better this next time, which implies like you're never going to be done. It's not make stuff best, just make stuff better. Like you're never going to be best. If you are, you're not trying hard enough. But also the other way you can think about it is the stuff. And something I like about the idea of that is stuff could be anything. Stuff could be your condition. Stuff could be your community. I love the idea of taking what we do, and like, it's cool that I made this wild 3D printed thing for my shop, but can I take this wild 3D printed thing and put it in my community somehow, so that makes the community better? So make stuff better has kind of been my mantra, in terms of like, never stop trying to improve, but also consider those around you and see how you can make it gooder for them. So yeah, go make stuff better.
Gooder. I love that word. Gooder.
Till it's goodest.
I want to say thank you so much. I adore you.
I want to say thank you so much. I adore you, and TJ, I adore you now. I knew that I was gonna adore you, but now I know for sure.
We had our 8 minutes of awesome in October, so like
we've octupled that since.
Yes, and that brings me amazing amounts of joy. And you're spreading the gospel of the tool stool, and that's it. That's incredible. We'll talk about tool stools at our year-end wrap-up, because
good. I do have a couple of white elephant gifts I need to pull together. I think I have one of them squared away now. Thank you.
Oh, that's so majestic.
Tool stool.
All right, boys and girls, it's been a blast. Thank you for listening, making it to the end. Let's see you guys not next week because there's a holiday and we're going to take a week off, but we will have our year-end wrap-up and perhaps a special guest. We'll see how special he feels like being. But yeah, and we'll wrap it up after that holiday and before the new year.
Same bad time, same bad channel.
That's right.
Thanks, guys, for joining us. Episode 141 with Mush.